The Bible is full of stories of thirsty people who are longing for a connection with God, as are we, desiring that deep and holy presence, to be with it, to be held by it. Hear these opening words from Psalm 42. As the deer longs for flowing streams, so does my soul long for you, O God. My soul thirsts for you, O God, for the living God. When will I come and behold the face of God?
And these words from Psalm 63. O God, you are my God. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water.
And then an actual story that comes from the Gospel of John, a story of a woman from Samaria who was thirsty.
Jesus was passing through Samaria and came to the city of Sychar. Jacob's well was there. And Jesus, tired out by his journey, sat by the well, while his disciples went into the city to buy food. It was about noon. Meanwhile, a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her,
"Give me a drink."
The Samaritan woman said to him,
What? You, a Jew, ask for a drink from a Samaritan woman? For she knew that Jews did not associate with Samaritans.
Oh, if you only knew what God is offering and who it is that is asking you for a drink, you would have been the one to ask, and he would have given you living water.
Sir, you have no bucket, and the well is deep. Where then can you get this living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself with his children and his flocks?
Whoever drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water that I shall give will never be thirsty again. The water that I shall give will be a spring of water within them, gushing up to eternal life.
Sir, give me some of that water so I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming all this way to get the water.
Go and call your husband and come back here.
I have no husband.
You're right in saying I have no husband. For though you have had 5 husbands, the man you are living with right now is not your husband. You have spoken the truth.
I see you are a prophet, so I have a question for you. Our ancestors worshipped at this mountain, but you Jews say that the place where people worship must be in Jerusalem.
Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will worship the Holy One neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. For true worshipers will worship the Holy One in spirit and in truth. Those are the kind of worshipers that God is seeking, for God is spirit, and those who worship God must do so in spirit and truth.
This is the witness of God's people.
Thanks be to God. I wish we still had access to our big sign, church sign, right at the corner of Burrard and Nelson Street, so that I could put the sermon title in huge capital letters and have the word naked in bright red. The sermon title, Naked Spirituality. And I want to emphasize the naked because that isn't often a word that you will hear in church. It suggests perhaps a little bit too much flesh with hints of sexuality, a lot of skin on show. And though I have some skin in the game, I'm not sure I want that much skin. And particularly when naked is associated with the word spirituality, which is, well, spiritual. Nothing really to do with nakedness, which is perhaps a little strange given the reality that at the very center of our faith hangs a naked Jesus on the cross. And yes, naked, despite all the discreet loincloths that have been added by artists and carvers and sculptors over the century. The Roman tradition always was to have full frontal, to show complete exposure, humiliation, the empire crushing any individual that offered an alternative vision, a way of being. And so, therefore, nakedness at the very heart of who we are as followers of Jesus. Now, one of the great naked stories in church history comes with St. Francis. Before he became a saint, when he was still Giovanni Francesco Bernardone, his father was an incredibly wealthy silk merchant in the town of Assisi, and Francis lived the high, fast life of any successful young man until there were moments of vision, moments when he was connected with the mystery, with the presence, moments when he felt called by God. And so on his own, he began to sell off some of his father's product, rare materials, and with the money was able to feed the poor, at which point his father had a fit and dragged his son into the judgment hall of Assisi and chose to disinherit him because Francis, of course, could not pay back the money that he had taken. And Francis said, "Enough, enough. I'm on a journey," gave all the money that he had and began to take the clothing off his back and stood there naked in front of the entire town of Assisi and said, "I am going naked to meet my naked Lord." And out he walked without a stitch of clothing, but with a heart that was so full and overflowing. It's an example that is inspiring. And so I find myself thinking of all the challenges that face any one of us to be naked en route to our naked God. I remember a painful joke that I heard 25 years ago, and it still stays with me. A young lad in the middle of a church worship service turned to his father and said, "Is Reverend Gary close to God? Does he really know God, or is it just a professional relationship?" And I found myself having to pull back poignantly and say, what is my relationship like? I am so hungry for something deep and intimate and mysterious where I am caught by the presence of love. I think of the psalmist. Those could be my cries. "Oh, as a deer longs for flowing streams, so does my soul long and thirst for you, O God, for you, the living God." There is that often painful contrast that I experience between religion and spirituality. So often I get so busy, and I suspect so many of us do, with perhaps the outward forms of religiosity that we forget what it is that we are truly thirsty for, what we are truly searching for. It would behoove us to continue listening to the critique of that growing cohort of people in Canada that say, "I'm spiritual, but I am not religious." It isn't a necessary conflict. I think true spirituality and true religion, they can easily come together, but so often they don't. Listen to this poem by Wendell Berry called "An Embarrassment." Do you want to say the blessing? No, I don't. But if you do, go ahead. And he went ahead, his prayer dressed in Sunday clothing, lifted a few feet up, and then dropped with a soft thump. If a lonely soul did ever cry out in company, an outcry to God, it would be as though at a sedate party, a man removed his clothes and took his wife passionately into his arms. Oh, now that's what I want. I want to be able to remove all the outer trappings and just be here myself, wanting to find that connection. And how will that happen? I'm sure that's the question that all of us have asked, because we know the difference between a prayer dressed up in Sunday clothing and the real thing that somehow puts us in touch with God. We're yearning for those connections, some of them life-changing, most of them small, day by day, day to day, wherein our routines and all the stuff that we would regularly do in the world, those become opportunities for us to truly, truly find ourselves naked before God. The Franciscan contemplative and activist Richard Rohr said, "The goal of all spirituality is to bring the naked person trustingly into the presence of the naked God." The important thing is that we are naked. In other words, we do not bring with us any title, any status, any merit, any shame, even any demerit. We come naked. And all we have to offer God is our true and real selves, and far too often we believe that that is not enough. But the good news is that it is enough, and God is yearning for the connection as deeply as we are. The challenge always, though, is how to get there. How does that happen? So I'm going to throw your way yet another poem, and this one may help us get another handle on where we want to go with naked spirituality. It's called Lightening the Load by Frances Dorff. And she writes, "The first thing we have to notice is how we've loaded up the camel with so much baggage, we'll never make it alive through the desert. Something has to go. So then we start the hard work of getting rid of the 1,001 things that we have brought along with us until even the camel has to go, and we are left walking barefoot on the desert sand. There's no telling what might happen at that moment, but I've heard that someone walking this way has seen a burning bush." The burning bush. The turning aside, noticing the presence of the angels that flare all around, the movement of spirit like wind, like water, trying to invite us into this new way of being. So, a question for us: how is it that we're going to get rid of all the baggage that we carry, the angers and resentments that shrink our soul, the guilt and the shame that somehow have been pounded into us somewhere along the route? How do we slowly get rid of those outer layers, the things that distract us and keep us worried and prevent us from seeing the burning bush, from being connected and feeling the beloved presence of God? Now, you don't always have to get naked, and remember, it's just a metaphor, so you're not going to see any more of my skin. But you don't actually have to take off your clothes to be naked with God. I mean, just take, for instance, the story of the Samaritan woman. She met Jesus, and he saw her, and to see her is to know her, and to know her is to love her. She was a woman. Rabbis never talk to women, particularly those they don't know. She was a Samaritan. Jews never talk to Samaritans. And she was a woman with an interesting background. 5 husbands, divorced, dead, disappeared, who knows, and she's working on number 6. And Jesus looks right through this, recognizes that she comes to the well at noon, a loner, not with the other women of the village who would come out at 9 in the cool of the morning. And he sees her, and he accepts her and treats her as a worthy conversational partner and says, "I have living water." And she says, "Oh, give me that water." And then she raises an interesting question. "Sir, We Samaritans worship on Mount Gerizim, and you Jews say that we must worship in Jerusalem. Who is right? And Jesus swats the question away and says, you're getting caught in religion again. And I'm talking about issues of the Spirit. It doesn't matter if your mountain is bigger than my mountain, if your doctrine is more politically correct than my doctrine. Go under that. Go and recognize that God needs to be worshiped in spirit and in truth. Look for the humility, but look above all for that beautiful moment of your thirst being quenched by the living water that comes from the love of God through Christ. But still, how do we get there? And that's what excites me about Brian McLaren's book, Naked Spirituality, because he wants to talk in simple and direct ways about God and to offer simple, doable spiritual practices that will help ground us, connect us, and strengthen our relationship with that loving presence, that mystery that we call God. In fact, he presents 12 very simple, direct words that become words to describe God, but more words that describe our own spiritual practices. He will use words like here and thanks and oh. He will use words like sorry, help, please. He will use words like when, no, why. He will use words like behold, yes. And the final word is not a word, it is silence. And as I said, each word leads to a particular practice, a doing, something tangible, something concrete. Let me share one of those with you that flows from the first word here. He suggests that moment after moment, whenever we find ourselves walking on seawall, in an elevator, falling asleep, in the middle of a communion service, listening to music, we say very gently, here I am, O Holy One. Here you are, O Holy One. Here we are together. And take a deep breath, and then follow those words with these. Who am I, God? Who are you, God? Who are we together? In a moment, we are going to hear a friend of our congregation, Rachel Landrecht, sing Long Before the Night This Ancient Love Was Born. And I found out that a few weeks ago when we had our Worship for All Ages with a hymn sing as part of our farewell to Daryl, people were asked to send in their favorite hymns, and this was the hymn that became number one. It is the most requested and favorite hymn of our congregation, number 282 in Voices United, Long Before the Night. And I suspect that people love it not only for the melody, but also for this sense that we're talking about an ancient love, and that's really what we want to be connected with. One of the verses actually says, long before the name of God was spoken, there was this love, this ancient love was born. And in our heart of hearts, that's what we're yearning for. Here I am. Here you are. Here we are together. Who am I, God? Who are you, God? Who are we together? And I invite you, while Rachel is singing, perhaps to let those words, that practice, arise in your heart so that you can hear the music in a new way, so that in fact you might receive the presence of the Holy and be transformed, be lifted up, and find that, in fact, you too have received living water. Amen.
Long before the night this ancient